Welcome to the last slot, I think. I think we've been given the last slot. Welcome to my cartographic digital twin, John, who, along with myself, are going to spend the next 2 hours with you doing a deep dive into the cartographic power of the ArcGIS platform, hopefully. And I'm going to start off. I didn't tell you that. I'm going to start off, and I'm going to show something particularly pertinent to this particular part of London and not at all contentious, which is a load of thematic maps on UK election data. So don't be triggered. We'll be absolutely fine. Okay, should we kick off? Let's see where we are. Right, who's ready to break some maps? At least one of you. Excellent. That's good. So, first thing is we need to open our favourite ArcGIS application and get going. So, what? Oh no, I'm sorry. Terribly sorry. Okay, we're in ArcGIS Pro 3.5, which is released in 3 hours' time. And that was the 2019 date, which of course looks like Maggie Simpson. We're not really that interested in the Maggie Simpson map. I'm going to be showing you a little bit more about the 2024 election, which was a complete and utter mess. Cartographically speaking, obviously, it's all I'm really talking about. But here we're just showing a map of the data coloured by the winner. We're all pretty familiar, I think, with the sort of colours used by the different political parties. I've put the regional boundaries on there, really just to highlight something that's very fundamental about a map like this, which is small scale, which is it's covered with a lot of large rural areas and a lot of small urban areas, which actually has a problem for us cognitively because it actually changes the amount of sort of relative colour that we're looking at, blues, reds, whatever colour we're interested in. So I want to introduce some maps to you that are hopefully going to change your perception of what you think about thematic mapping. Before we do that, of course, we can stick this map in a layout very simply. We could call it done if that's your thing. If some of you prefer the map in a slightly different format, you can change the layout very, very simply to obviously put a different perspective on things, should we say. But I'm interested in cartograms. First one I'm going to show you is a gridded cartogram. This is a set of regularly sized grids put together by Philip Brown and Alistair Ray, very helpful. Here's the 2019 election data, the Maggie map, and here's the 2024 data. And I've put the regional boundaries back on there. And look at that Greater London area. All those small political constituencies are now taking up a bigger proportion of the overall map. It makes it a lot easier to read the map as a whole, as opposed to trying to sort of, really squint at it and get some information about very specific points. We could go a little bit further. We could use the feature to point tool and create a little centroid, little mini hexes, and symbolize those with the 2019 data, which gives us a way of very simply looking at change over time between the two elections, if we wanted. We could probably go further and we could put some static arrows on with a definition query, which constituencies went left, which went right. This is all adding context. It allows people to look at the map and not just try to interpret it themselves, but to be led to the interpretation that we're asking them to think about. Well, that's all well and good, but we can do something a little bit better probably. What about animated arrows that move left or right, depending, just because we can? Doesn't mean so we should, but we can. How did I do that? Well, you go to the symbology pane, you click the gallery, you type arrow, and in the later versions of ArcGIS Pro, you get animated symbology. Pick one of those, and all you'll find is when you go back to properties, you've got some animated parameters that you can start to play around with to do speed, positioning, and all sorts of other things. That's about just the end of my first stint. Hang on. You got a problem?
Just give me a couple hours.
Okay.
20, 30 minutes, tops. Well, it seems like Ken just wants to talk about things that divide us. But I'd like to talk about this dress. Here's the story about this dress. It was a photograph taken by a mother of the bride about to go to her daughter's wedding up in Scotland. She sent it for review. Hey, how do you like this dress? And if you'd like a closer look at this dress, here's a QR code. You can scan this QR code, open it up on your phone, bring it home to your family. All sorts of interesting adventures will ensue. This dress nearly broke the internet 10 years ago. I don't know if you remember it, but let's see by a show of hands, how many of you perceive this dress as being blue and black? Okay, good portion. How many of you perceive it as being white and gold? How many of you are shocked right now that you just heard me ask that question and a bunch of people raised their hand? How many of you have seen it as both? Okay, if we could get security to escort these people out of here, I'd be more comfortable. One of these QR codes, by the way, will take you to an image of this dress. Never trust a QR code. Here's how the lines break down among the members of my family. So it's pretty evenly split. Interesting. This is the best example of what I've seen for a description. What's really going on here? The user perceives it as being in yellow light in a junky camera or kind of a bluish light. So context matters. Look at this. Incredible, right? I can't believe it. So this isn't just a concept that has to do with internet memes and photos of dresses, right? This comes into play in cartography. So our perceptions matter. The context in which we watch things matters. Here's some health data of England and Wales. Let me open up the symbology panel here. I'll choose a different categorization method. The proportion of people who say that they're in relatively good health. Okay, it's quantile, and I want to get rid of all those lines because those small geographic areas just blur into gray. So let me choose the more option, format all symbols at once, and say no color. Now all those lines are gone. I'll back out, and I'm going to add a reference graphic to my map. I've geocoded this. And let me just bit by bit select this, and via the eyedropper tool, sample some colors from this dress, whatever those colors may be. I'll keep them in a range of light to dark, however, so tone matters. When you're making a map and you're wondering, what color should I use if I have a gradient? If you go from light to dark, the tonal shift will be a cue to somebody regardless of the hue that they might see. So that's bulletproof if you can do something like that. So now we have a map of the dress represented by England and Wales. Let me go in and also do the same thing for the base map. Base map and environmental conditions of your audience matter in cartography. I'll copy this image to clipboard, and I can just paste it here. You can right-click a map and choose Copy to Clipboard. So think about the context in which that your map viewers are looking at your data. Context matters. It's back to you, Ken. Thanks. What did you say to me?
Okay, right, where do we leave it off? Animated symbology. Okay, we'll stick with the gridded cartogram just for the time being and try something a little bit different. I'm a huge fan of putting the data on the map.
Sounded like you were a huge fan of pudding.
Yes, on data on the map.
That's all I heard.
So here are the boundaries now coloured by the winning party, but with a whole load of labels. So let's look at the labelling properties and see what I've done in there. It's just a small piece of poultry arcade stuff, which apparently now anybody can write. Majority is the label size, color is the winning party to align with the border color, and italicized is the gain by a political party. And you can see what we're doing is try to encode a little bit of emphasis in the map so that all of the labels aren't just the same, that their color and their style is doing a little bit of the lifting as well in explaining what's going on. Maybe we could go a little bit further and just emphasize again, because cartographers are not at all prone to exaggeration. Put the boundaries on. Maybe we'll add another border for effect for the gains, just those areas that have gained. And that's simply done through the symbology pane. I'll show you how I did it. Click on one of the symbols. It's a slightly thicker border. It's got a -2 offset, and there's a whole shed load of transparent, that's technical, shed load of transparency, just to give it that effect. And so you end up just with a map that's got a little bit of subtlety in terms of the visuals to try to emphasize the gains over perhaps other areas. Okay, Pollux, you say, and you'd be correct. But we can do that. We can actually create a Jackson Pollock-inspired map by turning the centroids into picture marker symbols. I'm going to open the attribute table first of all to see how I did this. There's a field in here called Winner 2024, just with some labels, just with a simple, a few characters to describe who won. And that's useful to me because when I go to the catalogue view and look at these symbols that I imported, I've given them the same name as well, which means when I go to the symbology pane, I can use the match layer symbology to a style, and everything automatically gets matched to that style and mapped in that particular way. I've mapped some attributes as well, so majority controls transparency, the rotation is random to give it a kind of a splatter effect, and size is a proportional symbol set up as total votes, the square root of total votes. And you just kind of get this absolute mess, which you can't interpret whatsoever, but kind of looks good if you need a cover for a book or something like that. And I know what you're asking. You're saying, well, you've done it on the map. Can you do it on the cartogram? Well, it turns out you can. So there's the cartogram Pollux version if you so choose this kind of thing. Okay, that's great. But now I'm going to go a little bit crazy, and I'm going to show you some what I refer to as marmite maps. I'm glad you asked.
Oh, thank you, sir.
So a marmite map is something you will either love or you will hate. You will love that.
Is this like Vegemite?
No.
Okay. Is it like Bovril?
No.
Okay.
No. And you're definitely going to get it in the country when you go back in tomorrow. What's a marmite map? Well, it's a map you might love or you might hate. And these are fresh in ArcGIS Pro 3.5, which is now available in 2.9 hours. And what we're going to do is create a contiguous cartogram, otherwise known as a population density equalizing cartogram, using a new tool. We're going to map the majority, and we're going to give it a little name, and there's a couple of different versions. You can look at the doc for this, but I'm going to create a diffusion model. And I'm going to hit run, and we're obviously looking very nervously for a green tick.
Be good to us.
And guess what? We've got a green tick. And this is now a contiguous cartogram of the 2024 election. What have we done? Well, what we've done is we've completely destroyed geography to make things clearer. And it's a useful technique because we've warped the size and shape of the areas themselves to take account of that problem of geography not really being very helpful to making small-scale maps. Now, some people really like these. I like these. I know there's at least one person in here that likes them because he helped build the tool. Where's he sitting? Well, I quite like them. If the rest of you don't, well, tough. Just do a hotspot. It's fine. So I quite like these. Okay, if you don't, we can do another different type of cartogram. Let's do a Dawling cartogram. We've had a Python tool available for download for a while. You can download it, create the cartogram. We're going to do exactly the same style of cartogram on the same results layer, on the same data, the majority. So these should be differently sized, non-contiguous graphical symbols. I'll play around with the parameters, and I'll hit run. Okay, and we'll symbolize it the same, turn off the other layer, and you've now got a Dawling cartogram, which is a graphical kind of cartogram. Just by show of hands, how many prefer this to the other warped one? Yeah, so do I, frankly, but that's fine. Okay, so that's the Dawling cartogram. There's only one tab I've not really shown yet, which is the gratuitous 3D tab. So you'll know my opinion on this already. But you might like 3D. So we could drop the hexagon grid into a local scene. We can exaggerate by using the majority variable to add a height to the base value of 0. Again, cartographers exaggerate, so let's multiply it by 10 just to make a little bit more interest. And there's a piece of gratuitous 3D. On the downside, there's occlusion, there's problems of perspective, but if you make it interactive, if you put it on the web, if you allow people to pan and zoom and rotate, it can be kind of useful, and also useful if you want just a nice looking image. That's gratuitous 3D. What? Yeah, I'm pretty much nearly done. Okay.
Speaking of gratuitously good looking, so here is a,
there you go.
Here's a look at Ben An. I was invited to the Scottish conference a couple of years ago, and my lovely host took me on a hike up to the top of Ben An, and I took this amazing panoramic graphic, and I could feel the sense of the terrain, right? The hues were very specific to me, and the sense of being in the place kind of like landed here instead of here. And when it comes to terrain, it's one of those great opportunities in cartography where you can take a more impressionistic approach, and oftentimes it's more revealing of the nature of a place than a literal model of where the light and shadow falls. So let's take a look at some elevation data for Scotland, a portion of the Highlands. Look at all that beautiful, precise elevation detail. Let's generalize this. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to fire up a raster function, and I'll choose statistics because I want to blur it. What else would you call a blur tool? Let's call it statistics. I'm going to do a 40 pixel by 40 pixel moving window average of this, and I get a nice, suitably blurry version of a portion of the Highlands. Let's continue. Up in the Analysis tab, I'll open my geoprocessing tools, and I'll choose Contour, one of my favorite tools. And I'll point it at my newly blurred or generalized elevation data. 50 meters seemed like a good elevation step, and Contour Shell Up is pancake slices of polygons. And this is the visual result of discrete polygons of 50-meter elevation. I'll turn off these layers because I'm done with them now. Thank you for your service. I'll open the symbology panel, and I'll come up to the symbology panel for color, and I'm going to tie color to a color gradient, or tie elevation to a color gradient. I'll choose this nice Viridis color scheme. The Viridis color scheme is an excellent option. And we're looking down at this data, but I want to look kind of sideways, or pseudo 3D, 2.5D, isometric. Let's see what we can do. I'm going to open up the symbology panel for this. I'm going to add an effect because I want to have them splayed vertically based on their elevation. I'll choose to link attributions to these attributes to the visual options, and I'll choose Contour Min. And there it is. Oh my goodness. It's like I've taken this stack of playing cards and smeared it up. The only problem is I've smeared it a little bit too far, and so I'm going to tone this down a bit. I'll open up this formula, and I'll reduce this by a factor of 10. I'll divide this by 10 and see what we get. Okay, something that looks kind of like I want to reach out and touch this. Like I always want to reach out and touch Ken. Okay, continuing on.
That's not weird.
I'll close this. I'm going to choose the Control key and drag down to duplicate my layer quickly and easily. Control, drag down, duplicates a layer. I'll rename this Lighting. And for this layer, I'll open its symbology panel. I want it to have a nice little edge of light along the edge of these contour intervals. So I'll make the inside color neutral gray, and I'll, oh no, be good to me. Oh!
Oh no.
Oh.
Oh no. Oh, I like that.
Thank you. That's the only applause I might get today.
Wow.
Well,
It comes to someone you get an applause for the
has
crash.
this ever happened to you? You're not always stuck. Sometimes there's a trick. Let me see if I can just reach in here. Where are you? Come on. I felt it. Yep.
Yeah, you've got it. You've got it.
Yep.
You've got it.
There it
There
is.
you go.
It turned out my laptop ate my hard drive.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I have a rare tape hard drive.
Dear.
I don't have any way of fixing this. Does anyone have a special tool made for repairing a hard drive of this? Could you help me out with this?
I can do that.
Thank you, sir.
I can do that for you.
In the meantime, I'll carry on.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a lighted
By the way, only half
edge.
the room have got this gag.
And I'll make this black to transparent black. I'm going to give it a little bit of an offset so it's thicker than the other one. And this will go into full transparency, 100%. Okay, so it fades to transparent black at the edge. Now, I can use a blend mode to cook this into the underlying color layer. And I'll choose overlay.
Hard drive's fixed there.
Thank you, sir. Bill me. And now we have a pseudo 3D 2.5D isometric representation of a portion of the Scottish Highlands in ArcGIS Pro. And let's zoom out and see what we get for this whole thing. So sometimes an impressionistic version of elevation is interesting and fun and maybe even superior to a literal interpretation of light and shadow. And because it's so easy to make and do, you can change the color easily. You can choose to have no color if you choose for a sense of the drama. And what is this? What do you have to say? Oh, yes. Okay, I can't argue with that.
No. Right. I'm not leaving John with the last map. Because it was going to be the end, right? But I'm just going to add one more map. So I was sat at home a few weeks ago and quite enjoying Rory McIlroy winning the Masters finally. And I thought, I'll make a map. So this is my map. And I thought, well, I need some data. So I went to the Living Atlas of the World and I grabbed some data, which happened to be golf courses of the United States. And that's it. And there's my map. Thank you. But I'm not finished, not quite finished. But I thought I can do it better. So let's make a pictorial map. And I'm not going to show you how I did this because I'd like to invite you to come to San Diego for the user conference where I'm going to tell you how I made this. And I put a lovely little golfer down and there's golf balls all over it. The Great Lakes are bunkers, it's a green. But a map needs a title, correct? So I put a title on this map and there's only one place to put the title. So... So, thank you. With that, that's our fun and games over. If you want to follow any of the workflows that we do, the code snippets we publish, the YouTube videos that this guy makes in his shed, the books that I write, there you go, things that you can actually buy, then here's a couple of URLs you might want to take a picture of to either go to my stuff or John's stuff. Sorry, to go to my stuff. If you want John's stuff, you can if you want. It's entirely up to you, but thank you very much for
Thank you.
Playing along and having fun, and enjoy the rest of your evening.